Hello and a very good day, everyone. So now we will learn on how we can build a dashboard, a simple dashboard. So as we look on this data over here, we do have a data from a mechanic shop. So every mechanic shop, they will have their own respective expenses. So the expenses and this data, we do have the dates and the particular expenses, such as the workers' wages, insurance, rental, the tools and spare parts they purchase every month, and the other general expenses which falls under miscellaneous expenses. So these are the expenses incurred in a mechanic shop. So from this particular data, how we can create a simple dashboard. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing is what we can do is, since we do have a data in a form of raw data, that means the date, the expenses, and also the currency, ringgit Malaysia. So what we do is we highlight all. The first step is step number one, you put your cursor on the data. And then step number two is you just press Ctrl A on your keyboard, which means it will highlight all the table. And then once you highlight all the table, you click insert and click pivot table. All right, so put your cursor on the data. So we put our cursor on this data over here, and then we press Ctrl A. So once we press Ctrl A, it shows that the entire table, the entire data is highlighted. And then what we do is we click insert. So we click insert and we click pivot table. So once we click a pivot table, you will notice that a table will appear, a window will appear, or a box will appear. So what you can do is you can just press to OK. So once you have pressed OK, you will notice that you will be navigated to a new tab or a new sheet. And in this new sheet, you will notice that you have additional ribbons like pivot table analyze and also design. And also you will notice on your right hand side, you have pivot table field, which is the date, expenses, and RM. So you might be wondering, kenapa pula tiba-tiba ada date, expenses, and RM? If we go back to our raw data, we notice that this data, the headers, the title, we have date, expenses, and Ringgit Malaysia, RM. And so in these pivot table fields, we do have the date, expenses, and also the RM. So if just say I put my expenses over here, so it will appear all the expenses in the form of rows. And then if I put my expenses in columns, it will show all the data is presented on columns. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to untick this. And if I put my dates in the rows, you will notice that we do have the dates which is sorted by months. All right, but I don't want the dates to be appear here. So I'll just remove this. And I want the months to appear on a filter. Okay, that means if just say I were to select January, February, March, then it will appear as well, right? Okay, so expenses, I'll just put it over here. And RM, I just put in the values because we want to find the values, right? But the thing is, if you notice in this particular data, the numbers are difficult to be interpreted. It's difficult to read. So what you can do is you just highlight all this, right click. Okay, when you press right click, this menu comment will appear, and then you just click format cells, accounting, no decimal places, and maybe I just remove this symbol. And now you'll notice that now the numbers are easy to be interpreted. Of course, if you notice over here, the data is okay, the data is a bit messed up because you have 135 and suddenly you have 6 million. So what you can do is you right click and then you go to sort largest to the smallest. So now you have the largest data and to the smallest data. And then what you can do is you can actually create a pivot chart. All right, as you can see over here, you can create a pivot chart. So I'll just create a pivot chart and I want a bar chart. Okay, something like this. And I press OK. So in this particular bar chart, I just don't want the chart title. I don't want the grid lines. I don't want the legend. Okay, and maybe I'll just add the data label. Okay, so this is the data label. I don't want this, so I right click, I hide all field. I don't want this. Okay, And then if you notice, miscellaneous appears on the top. However, in this chart, it reflects the opposite way. So what you can do is you just click this, right click, format axis. Okay, so when you press format axis, a format axis menu will appear and you just tick categories in reverse order. So once you tick this, now it's being reflected accordingly. Miscellaneous, tools is being same. Okay, and then maybe let me make it bigger. Okay, so now it's bigger. Let me click this, right click, format data series, and then I go to fill and I put vary colors by point. So now you notice it shows different colors. Okay, all right. So now we are done with this. What's the next step? Next step, what you can do is I want to create some visualization. For example, over here, maybe I'll just put it somewhere here. Okay, so this one I'll just put as A4, and this one I'll put as B4 divided by B9, and I press F4 so that it's log. So now we notice, and then I'll just put this as percentage. So miscellaneous expenses increase about 70%. Let me just move this 70%, and let me just bring it down, and then you'll notice that the miscellaneous expenses is the main expenses because it incurs about 70% of the total expenses. Meanwhile, insurance and rental is the lowest because they incur 2% of the total expenses. All right, and then what I can do is I just go here and I go to pivot table analyze and I insert slicer. Okay, so I'll just choose the date, not date, sorry, months. Okay, so if just say I choose January, you notice the reading will change, the graph also change. If I choose February, the reading will change as well. Okay, all right. So now this is the data. So what we are going to do is we want to create a title. Okay, so let me copy this, copy, paste as values. Okay, and I put if on is equal on, then I put here FY 2022. Otherwise, it's going to reflect a particular month. Meaning to say, if you say I click January, the title shows January. If I click February, the title shows February. If I click just say July, the title shows July. But if just say I untick, the title shows 2022. So I'm going to put this as equal mechanic workshop expenses in, and I'm just going to put this. Okay, so if I put here Jan, so mechanic workshop expenses in January. If I put here February, it shows mechanic workshop expenses in February. But here, if you say I think this, it's mechanic workshop expenses in 2022. All right, and of course, now we do have this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this as pivot table. And I'm going to create a new tab, which is the dashboard. All right, so every dashboard need to have a title because when you're presenting to your manager needs to know what is the title and the story that you're presenting. So I'm going to create a title over here. Okay, and I'm going to put here equal mechanic workshop, and I'm going to cut this and I'm going to paste it over here. I'm going to cut this and paste it over here. So you have this data over here, and then maybe I'll just go to the slicer options. Okay, and then maybe I'll just click this as the dark blue. Okay, so you have this dark blue. Let me upkeep this as well. I'll put this middle, center, and make it bigger, and make it maybe dark blue and white font. Okay, and then I'll just go to view. Okay, so I'll go to view and I remove grid lines. So you don't have any grid lines. And I go to pivot table. I cut this and I paste it over here. Okay, so this one, let me cut this and I'm going to put it over here. So now you do have the data. So if I put Jan, it shows January. If I put February, it shows February. But now the thing is, I'm going to make it something interesting. What I'm going to do is I want to make a story. That means equal miscellaneous expenses. Okay, maybe I'll just copy the sentence. I'll just copy this. Okay. All right. So instead of saying marketing, maybe I'll just wrap text. So I'll put here equal miscellaneous expenses and roster fee. So I'll just remove this. Is the main expenses by accounting by about. Okay. And then I'll just put this, remove this, 64%. And then after that, I just put a roster fee. So now you notice miscellaneous expenses is the main expenses by accounting about 0.63. Here we have 64%, but the data being presented is 0.63. So what you can do is you can click this over here. Okay, you put here TEXT text formula. Okay, the value format text will be hashtag maybe apostrophe hashtag percentage close apostrophe close bracket. There you go. So miscellaneous expenses is the main expenses by accounting about 64%. And then what you can do is you click this, you go to insert, you create a shape. Okay, maybe something like this. Okay, and equal over here. Okay, so let me upkeep this. And maybe I'll just put your total expenses. Okay, so now you have it over here. And maybe I'll just remove this, remove no color and a black color font. And then maybe I'll just go to the shapes. I'll just put this shape away. Okay, there you go. So now if I click January, the mechanic workshop expenses in January shows that miscellaneous expenses is about 3.9 million, whereby it accounts about 87% of the total expenses. And then if just say I were to click on April, the mechanic workshop expenses in April shows that it accounts about 50% of the total expenses. So basically, when you prepare a dashboard, not only need to improvise the data visualization, but also you're able to articulate the story behind the numbers and also performances.